All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to do what we always do here. Take a really complex, real-world situation and break it down step by step so we can figure out what's actually going on beneath the surface. Today, we are looking at a highly personal, incredibly urgent medical crowdfunding appeal from a man named Ron. Now, you and I see these kinds of campaigns online all the time, right? People asking for a lifeline to cover massive medical debts or life-saving procedures. But how often do we actually stop to analyze the anatomy of these appeals? What exactly pushes a person to this absolute brink? And what are the real mechanics of their crisis? Today, we are walking completely through Ron's story, relying on his own words and his own numbers to understand the stark realities of navigating modern healthcare. Ultimately, this is a story about the absolute fight to maintain personal independence. This right here sets the entire emotional foundation for everything we're about to discuss. I don't want to simply give up and depend on other people. Man, that is powerful. This isn't just a basic plea for cash, it's literally a battle cry for self-reliance. Ron's whole campaign is built around a very specific identity. He's a guy who has worked his entire life, and he firmly believes that if you are physically capable of working, you absolutely should. He makes it so clear that he's tried his hardest to keep working through some profoundly difficult circumstances. He really doesn't want a handout just to sit at home. He is fighting tooth and nail for the physical capability to keep contributing to society and, frankly, to just take care of himself. The psychological stakes in a situation like this, they are just as high as the medical ones.
So that naturally leads to a pretty big question. If someone is really that fiercely independent and that dedicated to pulling their own weight, why ask strangers on the internet for help? It's a fair question, and Ron actually admits in his appeal that this is the absolute hardest part for him to explain. But the short answer? Desperation. He is just flat out running out of options. In fact, he's resorting to a platform called beggingmoney.com. He points out that he's tried the traditional routes before, like GoFundMe, and learned the hard way that standard crowdfunding doesn't just magically go viral and work for everybody. At the time he posted this appeal, he had just submitted his request to this new platform and was staring down a 7 to 12-day waiting period just for the campaign to even go live. He has no earthly idea if it's going to work. He's simply throwing a line into the dark because, well, he has to.
Okay, let's look at the immediate crisis. Ron is facing a severe, frankly terrifying threat of complete blindness. He desperately needs cataract surgery in both of his eyes. As it stands right now, his left eye is already essentially useless because of the cataract. That means all of his remaining functional vision is entirely reliant on his right eye, and the vision in that eye is deteriorating rapidly. Just think about that for a second. Every single day, the world is quite literally going darker for him. And since his entire livelihood, his ability to do his job, drive a car, just take care of his basic daily needs depends on his sight, this isn't merely a medical issue, it's a complete existential threat to his survival.
Now, you might be wondering how it got to this point. Ron's vision loss didn't just happen out of nowhere. It's actually the culmination of this brutal, compounding cycle of health hardships. Looking back over the years, he survived a major stroke, then a few years later, he endured a heart attack. More recently, he's been battling diabetes, and now, today, his vision is failing. It's like a domino effect. But here's the thing. He has kept pushing forward, kept trying to work through every single one of those major health events. But failing eyesight, that is the final straw. That's the one thing that physically strips away his ability to do his job safely. It's a really sobering reminder of how medical vulnerabilities stack up over time, gradually wearing down even the toughest people.
But health issues are really only half of Ron's story. He's also completely caught in a web of systemic failures. You've got to ask, why hasn't a traditional safety net caught him? Well, first off, he notes that Social Security hasn't provided the help he needs, and he's still actively trying to navigate that whole bureaucratic maze. Second, and this is incredibly frustrating, he is actually owed money from a court-ordered settlement. The court ordered it, the money is rightfully his, but it simply hasn't been sent to him. So he's completely stranded. The funds he's supposed to get haven't arrived, the government assistance hasn't materialized, and meanwhile, tick, tock. The clock is running out on his remaining vision. His eyesight definitely isn't waiting around for the bureaucracy to catch up. Which brings us to the stark reality of the situation, and it can all be summed up in one number: $25,000. That is the initial fundraising goal Ron has calculated he needs to secure his future and get his life back on track. Now, depending on who you are, 25 grand might seem like an absolutely insurmountable amount of money, or it might seem like a surprisingly low price tag to literally restore a man's entire livelihood. But a number this big in a crowdfunding campaign really needs context, right? People want to know exactly where their hard-earned cash is going. And to his credit, Ron is super transparent about how this $25,000 breaks down.
So let's break that daunting figure down. The absolute priority, the very first dollars raised, goes straight to the cataract surgeries. He's been quoted approximately $7,000 per eye. So that brings the surgical total to 14 grand right off the bat. But you know as well as I do, it's the hidden costs of healthcare that really sink people. Because of the surgery and the required recovery process, Ron expects he's going to need to stay in a hotel for about 2 weeks. At an estimated $200 a night, that's another $2,800 just for a safe, clean place to recover. The remaining $8,200, that's earmarked for vital transportation expenses, getting to and from all these medical appointments, and crucially, getting a dependable vehicle, because once he can see again, he actually needs a way to get back to work and handle everyday life.
What's really fascinating is how Ron's itemized list brilliantly illustrates his mindset. He is hyper aware of how asking for money online can be perceived, so he draws a very, very clear line in the sand. What he is not asking for is a luxury lifestyle or some flashy, expensive truck. What he is asking for is simply a chance to see, a chance to stay independent, and a chance to keep working. If there's any money left over after the medical and recovery costs, it goes strictly toward a reliable, basic vehicle just to keep him mobile. Think about it. He has spent his entire life working, and now he's essentially begging for the physical tools to just keep doing exactly that. He just wants to stay in the fight.
So how does an appeal like this actually mobilize people? Ron lays out some incredibly clear, accessible steps. Step 1 is financial, sure, but he keeps the barrier to entry super low. He's asking for $5, $10, or $20 via a PayPal link, pointing out that small amounts from a lot of people add up really quickly. But step 2 is honestly just as vital, sharing the story. He emphasizes that even if you can't afford to donate a dime, just sharing his campaign link could put it in front of someone who can. And step 3, that relies on the collective knowledge of the crowd. He's actively asking anyone watching to recommend charities, organizations, or medical assistance programs he might not even know exist. He's not just crowdsourcing funding, he's crowdsourcing actual logistical solutions. We're going to wrap up with Ron's own words because they leave us with a really poignant final thought. He says, "If I can get my eyesight restored, I want to keep working and keep fighting for as long as I possibly can." Wow. It really forces a powerful reflection on the fragility of our own self-reliance, doesn't it? We all take for granted our ability to work, to drive, to literally just see the world around us. Ron's story forces us to ask ourselves a pretty uncomfortable question. If you were suddenly stripped of your safety nets and you are facing a ticking clock on your own physical capabilities, what would you do to save your independence? It is a profound look into the realities of healthcare and resilience today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you next time.